r/AskReddit. Waiters, what Valentine Day disasters have you witnessed? I was the manager of a wings and pizza place with a full bar. Definitely not the kind of place you'd take someone for a romantic Valentine's Day dinner, but it was still busy because some people aren't very tactful. We had a guy who had called ahead and asked if we could put a ring and a dessert for him, and of course, we obliged. He dropped the ring off the day ahead and I put it in the safe in our office to keep it secure. Fast forward to Valentine's Day. The couple shows up, and they are so obviously in love that she didn't seem to notice or care about the fact that he had brought her to a middle of the road place with a sports bar atmosphere on the most romantic day of the year. They ordered champagne, well, the local winner is best sparkling white, entrees, and it was almost time for dessert. I had used my chef skills to whip up a special chocolate strawberry tart that wasn't on the menu, just for this occasion, because why not try to make their night at least a little fancy? I went to the safe to get the ring, and it wasn't there. I was freaking out big time. I asked everyone there if they knew what the duck had happened to it. My assistant manager on site had no idea, so I called my other assistant, who also had the safe code, and they didn't know either. Finally, my bar manager mentioned that one of the owners had been in earlier and spent a little time in the office. So, at my wit's end, I called the owner. It turns out that he had seen the ring in the safe and thought it was something a customer had left behind. Figuring that he had come into an extremely lucky situation, he decided, like the scumbag he was, that he'd take it for himself and save money on a gift for his wife on Valentine's. So, I asked the server and bar manager to help stall the couple. The server told them that we were going to do something special for their big date and to hold tight. I ran out, hopped in my car, and rushed to get the ring from the owner's house because he was, as I had mentioned, a scumbag and didn't want to be bothered with bringing the ring to the restaurant himself. The bar manager went over to the table and did some complicated tableside cocktail mix that had a bunch of flair bartending tricks and ended with a flaming shot that, once dropped into the rest, made it smoke. I was really disappointed when I heard about all of this because I would have loved to see it instead of breaking a ton of traffic laws on my quest to get the ring. Finally, I rushed back in after about 15 minutes of being on the brink of a heart attack, placed the ring on the dessert, and had their server take it out. At that point, just about the entire staff was watching the table, and when we saw the look on her face, my heart finally started beating again. She said yes. And I started looking for someone else to work for the very next day. They came in at lunch the day after, so it was pretty empty, but it was still for a Valentine's Day date. They were both pretty nice at the beginning. The guy asked for a picture and whatnot. As the meal went on, the dude got progressively drunker, and by the time I brought the check out, the woman was gone. When the dude gave me his card, he said, "I'll give you a bit of advice. If you're taking a girl out to break up with her, do it at a McDonald's and not an expensive restaurant." Old man proposed to old woman. He tried to get off the chair to kneel, tripped and fell, and I assume broke something, since he couldn't get back up, and we had to call an ambulance. My manager had to drive her teeth to the hospital separately because she had taken them out to eat a soup, Lord knows why, and left them on the table in the confusion. I had a Section 1V day that had a marriage proposal, a 40th anniversary, and a breakup all at the same time. The breakup was the worst. The guy brought his high-class date a gift, a mini ceramic bear holding balloons. He presented it when I was at the table and she looked at it like it was a hot turd. I just knew this was not going to end well. She left at the end of the meal and must have said something because he stayed at the table for another 40 minutes, head down and crying. I felt bad. He saw the celebrations going on at the other tables. I worked at a pretty high-end Mediterranean bistro. My second Valentine's there. It was probably the busiest night I've ever worked as a server. We had reservations that booked basically the entire restaurant including the bar and patio from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. No walk-ins were to be seated unless a reservation was cancelled or someone with a reservation didn't show up. Most of the customers were pretty understanding and either waited or simply left. One dude however kept pushing and pushing, asking every 10 minutes how much longer until he is seated, constantly saying how he is a regular customer and how his date is going to be there at 7. He got there at 6. We insisted that once a table was available and all the customers before him were seated, he would get a table, but because the amount of reservations we couldn't guarantee he would even get a table at all. At about 6:50 the guy loses it, fast walks up to the hostess stand where the reservation book is, grabs the reservation book and practically runs out the front door. Now everything is going to complete sheet, because the only copy of the reservations for the night, that is barely half over, is gone. Two of the owners ran outside to follow the guy and try and get the book back, but by the time they got out he had already left the parking lot. Even better is, 2 hours later, chaos is still running rampant and the dude shows back up saying he has a reservation for 2. All 5 of the owners, all brothers, escorted the dude and his date out to the parking lot and banned him from the restaurant permanently. They even took a picture of him and posted it in the window saying, "Do not serve this man TL. Dr. Salty dude without reservation steals reservation book and then tries to come back later. He proposed, she said no." He cried and tried to change her mind for 20 minutes while she sat there stony faced. She finally got up and walked out. He paid and left in tears. 16 years in hospitality gives you some good stories. The most awkward, my first job as a waitress, a guy wanted to propose to his girlfriend. He came in 2 months before to book and had everything figured out. He planned to pop the question during dessert. We had champagne, balloons, and sparklers prepped for the big moment. The time comes, he drops to 1, he gives a speech about his love for her. He asks, she says no, puts the ring in her bag, finishes her dessert and leaves. Quite possibly the most awkward thing I have had to witness, alongside around 200 other people. The manager gave him everything for free. He felt that bad for him. Cringed inside every time I saw him after that. The most ducked up, I was working as a duty manager, and one of the tills kept dropping off the network. As I was trying to fix it, I could clearly hear the conversation of the table by the waiter station. It started out sweet enough with her excitedly telling him she was pregnant. He went quiet and didn't say anything for a bit, and then asked her what the plan was. She said she was keeping the baby. He said he didn't want kids and had told her this. She got upset and said she thought he'd be happy and change his mind when he found out. By this point I fixed the till, but am unable to step away from this car crash. Turns out she stopped taking the pill without telling him, thinking she could turn him around. He said he knew she could be a little nuts sometimes, but this was next level. He told her it was over and she could send someone to collect her things as he wanted nothing more to do with her. He called me over to pay the bill and just left. The guy never even shouted, he just calmly went "duck this" and noped out of there. I couldn't even look her in the eye, just left her to leave in her own time. The funniest, managing hotel room service, where there was a Valentine's package that included getting each course of the special menu delivered to your room. More than a few couples thought it was a good idea to call for the next course and then start having sex. Having to help with deliveries as reception ducked up the bookings, I had the privilege of people answering the door naked, seeing sex toys strewn around, and one where the other members of the threesome were carrying on in the background. After complaints of similar instances from my team, I had to take action. I ended up having to call the offending guests and tell them if they could not respect my team by answering the door in at least a closed dressing gown, they could come down and collect the rest of their meal from the restaurant. Bonus from the same night, had to call an ambulance for a woman with a dislocated shoulder. The guy admitted that they were trying to recreate a bukkake type scene in the shower using conditioner as the cum. He slipped in the conditioner and fell on her. Not a waiter, but I was a pastry chef at this big resort in Cape Cod. We got a special order from this guy who was coming in for his anniversary, Valentine's Day. He wanted his dessert to have "Will you marry me" written on it so he could pop the question when it came out. He called ahead to the front and back kitchen, even came in himself that morning to make sure it was good to go. The whole crew was behind him. We had cooks all night coming in the ask if it had happened yet. I wrote the inscription on the plate and dressed it to the nines with gold leaf and expensive chocolate. I'm taking a picture of the plate just before it's set to go out and notice our head waiter come in with a weird look on his face. He says plainly they don't need it. She broke up with him before the entrees hit the table. I was eating in a fine dining establishment, Chili's, several years ago. In the next booth was a really young guy who had a big bunch of roses on the seat next to him. He kept looking at his watch, looking at the roses, and popping open a ring box for a peek at the ring. He did this for a half hour or so, then began calling and texting someone, presumably his girlfriend, over and over. As we were waiting for our check, he hands my wife the roses, mumbled something, and walked out. Poor guy. I was working at a corporate sports bar that specialized in chicken wings. V-Day, like most days, was insanely busy. As the evening winds down, someone calls in saying they're a professional food critic and demanded to speak to the manager. After a 15-minute call, the manager tells us the critic rated us a B and said the food was good, but the service sucked. He said he would leave that last part out of his review if we comped his meal and gave him vouchers for free meals in the future, but he refused over and over to say where he worked. Confused, the manager talked to the server, who confirmed that the guy ate alone, ran her around ragged while shamelessly hitting on her, and left 0 tip. He wrote his phone number on the tip line. Thirsty botch wanted free food because the server didn't call him immediately for a date. A guy did a backflip and asked a girl to be his Valentine. She declined. I walked up to him and asked if he was fine. He said it took him a week to perfect. Not my table, but back in my Olive Garden days, we had a man who looked to be in his mid-20s tap his empty wine glass with a fork to call for attention of the surrounding strangers, then get down on one knee with silver band in hand and ask his girlfriend/date to accept this promise ring. She looked horrified start to finish. Busboy on Las Vegas Strip, an attempted proposal. Dude tries to set up sign with GF's friends for her to show up and see the ring near a fountain. Duck stole the ring. They found it 2 hours later as he dropped in the fountain. She still said yes. Free drinks were given. A couple sitting at the bar were enjoying their night out. The man got up from his bar stool and left for the bathroom. As his girlfriend was alone and absolutely wasted at the bar, a random woman approached and revealed that she recently matched with the woman's boyfriend on Tinder and had hooked up a week earlier. The drunk girlfriend refused to believe this story, so the woman showed her his Tinder profile and their conversation. The boyfriend returned to a drunk, sobbing and screaming girlfriend. I felt like I was watching a reality TV show. It was incredible. The poor girl was basically carried out of the bar by her boyfriend of 3 years whom she just discovered has been cheating on her for who knows how long. It was the most dramatic moment I have ever experienced, and it was absolutely none of my business. Edit. I was a bar back at the time and this couple sat directly in front of the place I spend most of my time, the glass washing station. Edit 2. For those wondering how the woman knew the couple was in a long-term relationship. I really don't know. My guess is she figured it out the same way I did, based on listening, body language and the fact that this woman was overly touchy and liberal with cheek kisses and such. It was fairly obvious. Regardless, she approached out of concern and curiosity and she succeeded in outing the guy, which resulted in a very upsetting scene. Had a couple sign divorce papers and cry a bunch. I was working for a higher-end chain steakhouse in the northwest corner of Greater Los Angeles, in the Valley. Valentine's is obviously one of the top 5 busiest days of the year for us. We did about 500 covers between 5 and 10 p.m. It's also a restaurant with a very open concept floor plan. Booths along the 4 walls of the restaurant and an array of tables in the middle with no partitions or anything between them. A younger couple, maybe mid-20s, dressed to the nines came in shortly after we opened and were seated in a table basically in the dead center of the dining room. They were very friendly and pleasant, and I could tell that for them, dining at our restaurant was a really special treat, so I did everything in my power to make it special for them. When they're done, probably around 7, I brought their check, which was around $300. When I came back to pick it up, the guy had a super embarrassed look on his face, and he said he thinks he left his wallet in the car, and the woman, who is embarrassed for him, doesn't have anything with her because her dress had no pockets and she didn't bring a purse. So he goes out and 5 minutes later comes back in looking pale as a ghost. He has left his wallet at home and asks if he can call back later with payment info. My GM won't let this fly because there's no collateral of any sort he can leave, so the guy has to drive home to Burbank to get his wallet while the woman waits with her hair done and her red lipstick and her pretty dress in the middle of the dining room on Valentine's Day. Now, on the best day with no traffic, never happens, it's at least 40 minutes each way from our restaurant to Burbank. She was there for almost 2 hours waiting for this guy. We were also embarrassed for her that the staff kept discreetly slipping her drinks and little amuse-bouche bites from the kitchen. It was one of the most awkward things I've ever seen in a restaurant. When he finally got back, he was super apologetic to us and to her. He paid the check and tipped like 30% and they left. It was pretty obvious it was an honest mistake, but I still think about that couple from time to time and wonder how things worked out for them. A guy proposed to his girlfriend, and she said no. The guy threw his arms up and ran out of the building. Later, while waiting for someone to pick her up, she told us it was completely out of the blue because they'd only been dating for a few months. Another V-Day, a guy raised a huge fuss over the fact that we wouldn't serve liquor to his underage girlfriend. There was a note in our reservations that it was an engagement, they wanted champagne, a specific seat, bunch of other stuff. The server comes up to the table with something like, "So I read we are celebrating an engagement, congratulations." Confusion from the woman, glaring from the guy. He hadn't proposed yet. She ruined it. A 16-year-old boy proposed to a 15-year-old girl with a cheap ring and the whipped cream of her dessert. She said yes. In college I waited tables and Valentine's Day was always a good one in terms of tips. I once saw a couple come in to eat. Halfway through the dinner the man's wife shows up to surprise the couple. The wife took the wine bottle and poured the remnants on the husband's head, took off her ring, and told the girlfriend she could have him. He tipped me a $100 back when I served food at one of those super touristy seafood restaurants. I worked a Valentine's Day double shift. For lunch, this younger couple came in celebrating their 1-year anniversary. I offer my congratulations and proceed to do my usual spiel before taking orders. The girl is looking more and more dismayed the longer I talk. Finally I get to the end and ask if there are any allergies. She looks directly at her boyfriend and states, "Yes, I'm allergic to fish and shellfish." Then looks over at me very sad. I made sure every aspect of her meal was fine for her. But it was that look of "we've been dating a year and he still takes me to a restaurant that could kill me" that really did it for me. Like and subscribe for more videos.